Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into something huge, something that really shapes, well, decades of our lives.
Yeah, we're talking about work, finding fulfillment in what we do.
Exactly. And our source material for this deep dive is fascinating. It's Chapter 3 from Karl Pillemer's book, 30 Lessons for Living, Tried and True Advice from the Wisest Americans.
That's right. The chapter's called Glad to Get Up in the Morning. Kind of says it all, doesn't it?
It really does. So our mission here is to pull out the wisdom from over 1,000 American elders.
Think about that collective experience. The source mentions something like 50,000 years of work history across just about every job imaginable.
It's incredible perspective. They've really seen it all. And they have some pretty powerful things to say about building a career that actually feels successful and fulfilling.
And it feels so relevant right now, doesn't it? Work is, it's more than just a paycheck for most of us.
Oh, absolutely. It's where we spend so much time. It shapes our identity.
And figuring out the job market, finding meaning, maybe making a change mid-career, or even finding an encore career later on. These are big challenges.
Yeah. There's that old idea, work is just survival. The source even quotes Genesis by the sweat of your brow.
Right, that basic necessity. And obviously that's still true. We need to survive.
But these elders, looking back on their long lives, work was clearly much, much more than that.
Definitely. It was a source of meaning, purpose, feeling like you've achieved something. Self-worth, identity, connection, all of that.
And we know, especially here in the U.S., people work a lot. The source mentions over 1,800 hours a year on average.
And millions of vacation days just unused. It's really baked into the culture.
It is. And things are different now, too. Many of these elders might have had one main job or career.
Whereas young people today, they're probably looking at 5, 10, maybe even more jobs over their working lives.
So this advice on how to choose, how to navigate, it becomes really crucial.
Freud famously said love and work are the cornerstones of happiness.
We did a deep dive on love.
And now we're digging into work, but through this amazing lens of the elders' experience.
And their paths were so varied, right? Some stayed put, others jumped around, some faced unemployment, part-time work.
Yeah, some found that fulfilling work really late in life. But out of all that diversity, the source identifies 5 key lessons that kept coming up.
Okay, let's get into the first one. This really cuts to the chase, and it might challenge how a lot of people think about careers.
It really might.
Yeah.
Lesson 1 is, choose your career based on intrinsic rewards, not primarily the financial ones.
They were really emphatic about this, weren't they? The source says they almost visibly cringe when young people say their main goal is just making tons of money.
Yeah, you can almost picture it.
Yeah.
Because they've seen where that leads long term.
And we see it, right? Students choosing, finance over something they might secretly love, like teaching or art, just because of the potential salary.
Exactly. The source calls it being seduced by salaries into fields they end up disliking.
So from their perspective, looking back over a long life,
it's unanimous. Time spent doing something you actually enjoy. That trumps money anytime. That's a direct quote.
Now, let's be clear. They're not saying you should aim to be poor.
No, not at all. It's not about being a starving artist necessarily.
But the point is, living on maybe a bit less income, but genuinely enjoying the hours you spend working, that's vastly better than grinding away at something you hate, just living for weekends and vacations.
If doing what you love means a smaller paycheck, they pretty much called it a no-brainer.
That feels pretty countercultural today.
It does. There's a story about Willie Bradfield, an athletics coach. He called his work a labor of love, admitted he made very little money, but he adored it.
And his advice?
He said, get into something that you love, where you're totally happy. Striving just to make money shouldn't be number one.
And then there was Esther Brookshire.
Right. She ran a volunteer program, found deep fulfillment because it aligned with her values. She told her granddaughters, make sure whatever you do for money makes you happy, because you have to do it every day.
She also recommended work that includes others, that connection piece again.
And this idea of balancing money and time, or maybe income and quality of life, it came up a lot.
Some actually chose part-time work, right? Lived more simply.
Exactly. Renting instead of owning, fewer consumer goods, but having the time and energy for work or a lifestyle they genuinely enjoyed.
Like Kevin Tetrio, the soup kitchen manager.
Yeah, he loved working with people, being outside, that sort of constant profit pressure. Part-time meant he wasn't worn out or burned out.
He had freedom for other things.
And felt he had enough money to live the way I want.
It's almost like that saying, do what you love and the money will follow. Maybe not vast riches, but enough.
The source connects this to psychology, eudaimonia versus hedonia.
Right. Hedonia is that happiness from pleasure, buying stuff. Eudaimonia is deeper happiness from growth, meaning, relationships, contributing.
And the elders' experiences overwhelmingly point towards eudaimonia being the key to a happy work life.
But here's the really stunning bit, the quantitative finding.
Yeah, this blew me away. Out of over 1,000 experts interviewed, not a single one said that happiness comes from working hard just to make money.
Not one.
Not one said it came from being richer than other people or choosing work only based on earning potential.
And yet, that's how so many people operate. It's often the advice given.
But the people who've lived the longest reflected the most. They completely reject that idea.
Joyce Casey has put it so well. Chasing external validation being richer, more important, leads to disappointment. You're always comparing.
But seeking fulfillment in the work itself, that's a success you can guarantee for yourself. She called finding that kind of work one of the greatest blessings.
So the big takeaway, straight from them to you listening, if you're thinking about a change, maybe less pay, but more meaning.
They'd say, do it anyway. Life's too short. There's literally no time to waste. No paycheck makes up for years spent bored or miserable.
Like Morgan Grandison said, if you're not happy, get out. They kept them only because of the dollars and cents and not because of life. Powerful stuff.
Wow. Yeah, and that leads perfectly into the second lesson, actually.
Because finding that fulfilling job, it might not happen on the first try.
Exactly. The reality is you might start out in something that's just not it.
And the real tragedy, according to the experts, isn't landing in the wrong job initially.
It's staying there. Lesson 2 is don't give up on looking.
Don't just drift along for years in something you dislike, right? Especially if others pushed you into it.
Right. Carolyn Toya's story has mentioned she tried a few dead ends before finding her place in health education.
And she really stressed setting your goals on work you genuinely enjoy doing. Don't stay just for the money. Keep aiming for a position where you actually like going to work.
And Gerald Hendricks, who was an entrepreneur, he had some really practical advice here.
Oh, yeah, the manageable chunks idea.
Exactly. He said, think of your work life in chunks you can afford to spare.
Yeah.
Like gambling, almost.
You can risk a year, maybe 2 or 3, on a job that isn't perfect. Use it to learn the ropes, make contacts.
But if it's fundamentally not right for you, give yourself permission to move on after that chunk of time.
That framework, that time limit, gives you freedom to experiment, doesn't it?
It does. He even said he learned more from his failures, the jobs that didn't pan out, than his successes.
And speaking of not giving up, the source highlights Martin Sanderson's story, the Tuskegee Airmen.
What an incredible example of persistence. Dreaming of flying when the military was segregated, telling black men there were no facilities to train Negroes to fly.
Saving pennies for model planes, getting rejected, going back to being a bellhop, applying again, rejected again.
It took a third try, when things loosened up slightly, for him to get in, pass the tests, and train at Tuskegee.
And even then, facing segregation within the ranks, flying combat missions, he talked about being afraid, seeing bullets.
Yeah, but he refused to let racism or setbacks stop him. He didn't stay a bellhop. He became a pioneer.
He built a life and career that seemed impossible before. He became this respected figure, contributing to change.
His whole philosophy was about seeing individuals, keeping an open mind, not letting prejudice define him or hold him back. Immense pride in that.
So the message from all these experts who faced really tough times, depressions, discrimination,
is that if you're unhappy at work, don't just accept it as fate. Keep looking. Keep searching for that fit.
You spend way too much of your life working to just stay stuck somewhere you hate.
Absolutely. But, okay, there's a slight flaw in just saying, keep looking.
Right. Because sometimes you are stuck, at least for a while. You can't always just up and leave.
Which brings us to lesson 3. Make the most of a bad job.
This feels very real world. We've all had those jobs. The source author mentions being a dishwasher, hating it, watching the clock.
Totally relatable. Starter jobs, the only job available in town, entry-level grunt work, maybe just a toxic environment.
Yeah, and when you're in that situation, hearing just love your job feels unhelpful.
Completely. But the elders had a different take. It's more like, if you can't have the job you love, find something worthwhile about the one you're in.
So how do you do that? They talked about turning even boring jobs into learning opportunities.
Yeah, Sam Winston, the engineer and manager, he said he learned a ton from jobs he didn't even like.
His key was observation.
Just paying attention. Learn everything you can about what's happening around you. You never know when that insight about how a business runs or how employees are treated will be useful later.
He also said you can learn from difficult people.
Even if they're duds or toxic, they can serve as a bad example. You learn what not to do.
That's a good reframe. And Stephanie Farrington in the bank credit department. That sounds like a potentially tough job.
Dealing with collections, yeah. But she reframed it as caregiving, helping people through difficult financial times.
Wow, so she found personal meaning in it. Her boss was surprised people actually liked dealing with her department.
She transformed it by bringing her values into it. Another tactic they mentioned is just getting good at the job.
Even if you don't love it.
Yeah, because just being checked out and disinterested makes it even more boring. But mastering the tasks, finding ways to improve things, taking some pride in it, that can make it more bearable, even satisfying on some level.
Antoinette Watkins, the bookkeeper, said even if it's not your dream job, do it well because you feel so much better personally. Don't just waste the time.
George Villoba, the welder, echoed that. Take pride. Do your best work. Make it look good. You'll feel better about yourself.
And Keith Kuhn, the consultant, sort of summed it up.
He said, the goal in the job is to continually learn. Find the learning, even if it's boring. Consciously work at it. Believe it's the lesson you need right now.
Okay, so that covers how to approach the job itself. But what about the people you work with? That leads to the next lesson.
Yes, this one is huge. Lesson 4, emotional intelligence trumps every other kind.
They were really clear on this. Doesn't matter how smart or skilled you are technically.
If you can't get along with people, you won't succeed. You must have interpersonal skills.
The example in the source about the brilliant academic who nobody could stand, that was telling.
Super smart, published, got grants. But rude, petty, acted superior. The faculty voted him out.
Not because he wasn't good at the technical parts of his job.
But because his lack of basic interpersonal skills made him impossible to work with. Even in fields focused on objective results, this stuff matters. Hugely.
And the elders agreed, right? Across all kinds of jobs.
Overwhelmingly. Empathy, listening, resolving conflict. These aren't soft skills. They're fundamental workplace skills. They worried young people focus too much on just the technical side.
Sonny Lee, the engineer, put it simply. You always work with other people.
Yeah. Technical skill matters, but how you work with others matters just as much, maybe more. He felt most work involves being in the people-pleasing business to some extent. Getting along is key.
And the good news is you can learn this stuff. It's not just innate.
Right. Shelley Donaldson worked on it actively, asking better questions, trying to see things from others' perspectives, even making her team debate opposing views.
Larry Tice learned it the hard way in the military.
Yeah, thrown in with all sorts. A punk from Vermont, he said, had no choice but to figure out how to get along. His takeaway: accept people unless they give you a reason not to.
And Tim Burke, the farmer managing employees, his advice was about patience.
Deal with people patiently. Don't rush to judgment. Remember, you aren't living their lives. Don't criticize from afar. Consult them. Don't just boss them around.
The source identifies the common thread here as humility.
Healthy humility. Respecting others' knowledge, even if they're lower on the org chart. Dropping the boss knows best act. Being willing to learn from anyone.
Anthony Scheel, the engineer consultant, said he succeeded by assuming mostly everybody here knows more than I do.
He saw his role as using their expertise, collecting information. That humility added value.
And Father Jim Scott, the priest and administrator.
His key was focusing on others. Not just ethically, but because it works better. He advised assuming others are better than you, not taking yourself too seriously.
He had that great metaphor, the mirror versus the window.
Yeah. Stop looking in the mirror at your ego, your worries, comparing yourself. That clouds everything.
Go to the window, look outside, see other people, their perspectives, their needs.
So the message is, devote real effort to workplace relationships. Bad relationships poison everything. Lacking empathy blocks success. And humility is essential. Look out the window.
Which leads us to the fifth and final lesson. And for many, this seemed like the ultimate goal.
It really did. Lesson 5. Everyone needs autonomy.
The hypothetical choice. High pay but no control versus lower pay with freedom.
The elders chose autonomy. Hands down, every time.
That ability to act independently, that self-directing freedom. That's what you should aim for, they said. Look for it. Work towards it.
You can find it in different ways, choosing a profession with built-in independence, working your way up to a position of trust, or
starting your own business.
Right. But they warned about getting stuck in the middle. Like Anthony Scheel said, That's tough. You have responsibility, but often little real control or freedom.
Joe McCluskey, who left corporate life to run his own company.
He found the hands-on involvement way more satisfying. Being far from the real action in corporate management wasn't fulfilling. Starting his own thing gave him the fun back, the autonomy.
Betsy Glynn, the office manager, loved her job mainly because nobody told me what to do.
Having a say, feeling like your input matters, not just having to implement ideas you think are terrible, that freedom is huge for job satisfaction.
And it seems the people who valued autonomy most were the ones who'd really lacked it earlier.
Definitely. Glenn Carvey's story is so powerful here. Years of hard, dead-end jobs with zero control, starting as a kid in the Depression.
Working multiple jobs, wife packing 2 lunches, delivering phone books, just grinding away.
His best job was the last one, owning his own tire store, being his own boss.
He called it fun.
Yeah, the money was his, the responsibility was his, but the freedom was his too. After decades without it, autonomy was the pinnacle of career satisfaction for him.
And the source clearly links autonomy and purpose. Without them, work just feels like a burden.
Absolutely. So those are the 5 big lessons distilled from all that experience.
And the source wraps it all up with a kind of diagnostic test, something you can ask yourself right now.
Yeah, it brings us right back to that chapter title, Glad to Get Up in the Morning. The test is just that simple.
Do I wake up in the morning looking forward to work?
And they're realistic. It doesn't mean you have to be bouncing off the walls with excitement every single day.
But it means not feeling that consistent dread, depression, or foot-dragging reluctance.
Sally Wilson, the teacher, said pay attention to that feeling. No amount of money is worth dreading your day.
Tony First, the CEO, was blunt. If you can't wake up wanting to go, you're in the wrong job. Simple as that.
And Albert Folsom, the farmer sage, put it beautifully. If you want to see the sun come up, you've got to get up in the dark, meaning find enjoyment in the work itself. He called going to a job you don't like a harsh penalty.
The source says the elders delivered this warning with real force, like a nightmare shouting a warning.
Wasting years, decades in a job you dislike. They saw it as a recipe for regret, a tragic mistake, even pure idiocy.
So the question they pose directly to you listening, look back over the last few months. When you wake up, how do you honestly feel about the workday ahead?
If that feeling is consistently negative dread, reluctance, heaviness, the elders are telling you really clearly it's time.
Time to look inside, figure out what's wrong, and look outside at what might need to change. It might just be time for a change.
That simple test, combined with those 5 lessons, it's such a powerful framework.
It really is. Focusing on intrinsic rewards, not giving up the search, learning from bad jobs, developing emotional intelligence, seeking autonomy, and checking in with that morning feeling, it's incredibly practical wisdom.
Hard-won wisdom straight from people who lived it. This book, 30 Lessons for Living, is just packed with this kind of stuff.
It really is a goldmine. And we've really only focused on one chapter here today.
There's so much more. We're definitely excited to keep digging into it.
So please join us for future deep dives. We'll continue unpacking more of these lessons, more surprising insights from these amazing sources. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We look forward to exploring more together next time.